So welcome back everyone to the last video of the lecture and training organization video series. So in this last video I will try to provide a safe landing and to reflect on the content, starting with a brief summary of what we learned during the last couple of videos. So first of all, we started with playing Quincy. Probably some of you are my age and you can remember Quincy. So we did a dissection of a typical training day into its individual parts. And we have been considering how to compensate the shortcomings that are introduced by remote settings by different opportunities that we have. So, and what we learned is that one of the coolest things in a remote setting is that we no longer need to stick to only one day, but rather we can expand the time frame in the beginning of a training and in the end of a training. So we have more time to execute different tasks. So we separated our training concept into 3 different phases, one for the preparation, a second one for the execution, which is of course the main part, and then we also can use some time in a post-processing scenario. Then we took a little bit a closer look and we have seen that in the preparation phase, preparation is not only addressing the infrastructure, which of course is important, but it is also addressing the participants. So from the infrastructure point of view, here we can improve everything a bit. I just recap the topic of single point of entry for participants. So keep the complexity low for participants. And in reference to the participants, we can use the preparation to establish a relation with them, to improve their technical competences. So at least for those things that we are going to use. And of course, to also execute our expectation management, in particular, the aspect of please turn your camera on. It's much nicer if you see the picture of the people. For the subsequent execution phase, we had a more detailed discussion on the topic of structure, choreography, and orchestration. So we have already seen that I need to invest a little bit more time into planning of my choreography, because a remote setting of course doesn't give me the whole freedom that I have in a seminar room, where I can make some improvisation, integrate some spontaneous exercises and stuff like that. So I really have to consider how do I plan to lead the training, because everything what I want to do needs to be prepared in advance. But also I need to prepare flexibility. So I typically need to prepare options, which means I have to prepare more elements than I would use during a training. And for the last phase, the post-processing phase, we have the typical phases of the typical aspects of the feedback and the protocol. And here my important point is that we can really use the post-processing phase to place a trigger for participants to take action after the training. It's not just a must-do action because the client wants to have it. It really is our chance after the training to give an additional push. Yeah, and as we have seen in the last video, there is a little bit of difference between a lecture and a training. So the training typically is busy with orchestrating one day, and in a lecture we have to cover a whole semester, which means that my format is different. In addition, we have different kinds of formats. We have a varying number of students, which can be very high. And so we learned about the approach of polarized learning, which basically involves the flipped classroom concept. And it means to make everything that's possible asynchronous, like a video, and use the time that you have for interaction for an intensified learning. So, but that's the good news. We have concepts that really can work. The bad news is that these concepts, of course, are not a blueprint for every lecture and every content. Rather, it's just a baseline which can be adapted or further elaborated for your individual setting. Yeah, so that's the summary, and now let's come to the key messages, to the main points for remote settings in that case. So first of all, what we need to really to consider is that remote settings, they allow less spontaneous actions and they require more planning. Yeah. So you don't have the option to change your plan right on the fly, because this would mean that you have to do something which is not prepared, which is not a good idea in a remote setting. So make a plan, stick to your plan, but plan for options. Yeah? So invest time in planning. That's the basic message here. The second thing is remote settings require preparation. So it doesn't work just to enter the room in the morning and, yeah, I know my training, I can do it. No, you really have to explicitly work on the preparation on both aspects, the infrastructure and the participants. The third message that I would like to share with you here is that we have to be aware on the meta level that remote settings introduce additional complexity, which is delivered by the infrastructure. And as we discussed very in the beginning of the training, we should try to shift the complexity away from the participants towards the trainer. Yeah? Which means I have to educate myself to deal with the complexity, but it delivers the benefit that for participants, life is more easier and they can concentrate on the content. In the topic of organization, in context of the organization, this means we should try to cover all elements that we use under one umbrella and to only provide one single point of entry for participants where they can find everything that they need in one picture. Yeah. Like, for example, a SharePoint page or a Moodle page or whatever you prefer to have. Yeah, and not everything is bad in the new normal. So what I realized during the last 1.5 years is that remote settings are not just a compromise or a bad supplement or a poor supplement for on-site settings. There are also some cool things possible now that have not been possible before. So like using the time before and after the training, the application of innovative concepts like flipped classroom. And something that's not mentioned here is that not only we as trainers or teachers improve, but also the digital competence of our clients or our audience has improved. So I would say here we have new opportunities, new bits and pieces that we can use. And I guess in future, the challenge would be to make the decision what of them we want to use and what of them we're going to skip. So it's not a good idea to use everything that's possible. Rather, it's a good idea to think about what do I want and which elements could I use to achieve my goal. Yeah, but in the end, we still have to mention that the last 1.5 years have been pretty fast paced in that context. So remote trainings and remote teaching is not to be considered as one discipline and that's the state of the art. Rather, it's work in progress. So it's still a topic that is developing, and I guess everyone who is in that business is still learning. So my final message for this blog is stay curious and please share your experiences, keep the community alive so we can learn from each other. Yeah, and with that, I would like to close this particular lecture now, and I will see you in the next video, which is the very, very last one, where I try to provide a safe landing and to summarize the whole masterclass for you. So see you there in the final video.